I'm standing in that hospital hallway, white walls closing in on me, fluorescent lights humming above my head like they knew something I didn't. Dr. Morrison's hand is on my shoulder, and he's leaning in close, too close, his breath warm against my ear. That's when he whispers it. 7 words that made my blood run cold. 7 words that would tear apart everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my 53 years of marriage. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My hands started shaking so bad I had to grip the wall just to stay standing. The doctor pulled back, looked me dead in the eyes with this expression, half pity, half fear, and then he just walked away. Left me there. Left me with the truth burning in my chest like hot coals. I walked out of that hospital a different man than the one who walked in. Every step felt heavier. Every breath felt stolen. And when I got home, when I looked at my wife's face across the dinner table that night, I finally understood why he had to whisper it. Some truths are too dangerous to say out loud. Some truths can kill you faster than any disease. But before I tell you what he said, before I take you down this road that changed everything, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, if you've ever built a life with someone only to find out it was built on sand, then hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because these stories, they matter. They're real. They're raw. And somebody out there needs to hear them. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, what part of this world you call home. Because loneliness is universal, but so is healing. And maybe, just maybe, my pain can be your lesson. My name is Sterling Whitmore. I'm 76 years old now, but this story takes me back to when I was 73, living in Richmond, Virginia, in the same house on Chamberlain Avenue that I bought in 1971. The house where I raised my children. The house where I die surrounded by love. I was wrong about a lot of things back then, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, back before the whisper, back when I still believed in the life I'd built. The morning of my 53rd wedding anniversary started like most mornings in the Whitmore household, with the smell of bacon frying and Loretta's voice drifting up the stairs, calling me down for breakfast. I remember lying in bed for an extra minute, just listening to her humming that old Aretha Franklin song she loved, Daydreaming. The August sun was pouring through the curtains, making patterns on the hardwood floor, and I felt grateful, genuinely grateful. I had a good woman, 3 grown children who called me regularly, a paid-off mortgage, and enough retirement money to live comfortably. At 73, I figured I'd done all right for a boy from Southside Richmond who'd started with nothing but a strong back and a willingness to work. I got up, pulled on my house robe, and headed downstairs to kiss my wife good morning like I'd done for 53 years. Like I thought I'd do for however many years God gave me left. Loretta was standing at the stove, her silver hair pulled back in that bun she always wore, her brown skin still smooth despite the decades. She'd put on a little weight over the years, but so had I, and I loved her just the same, maybe more if that was possible. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and that smile lit up her face. "There's my husband," she said, like she was surprised to see me, like I hadn't come down to breakfast every morning for half a century. I walked over and wrapped my arms around her waist, kissed the side of her neck. She smelled like cocoa butter and bacon grease and home. "Happy anniversary, baby," I whispered. She leaned back into me, and for a moment, everything in the world felt right. Our son, Marcus, had called the night before to say he was driving up from Durham with his wife and our grandkids for dinner. Our daughters, Vanessa and Simone, had already sent flowers, big, beautiful arrangements that were sitting on the dining room table. The house felt full of love, full of life. I had no idea I was standing in the middle of a lie so deep, so carefully constructed that it would take a doctor's whisper to crack it open. We sat down to eat, and Loretta started talking about the party she'd planned for that evening. "Nothing too fancy," she said, "just family and a few close friends." She'd ordered a cake from that bakery on Broad Street, the one with the lemon cream filling I liked. She'd bought a new dress, navy blue with gold buttons, and she wanted to know if I thought she should wear her pearl earrings or the gold hoops our daughter Vanessa had given her for Christmas. I told her she'd look beautiful in anything, and I meant it. I watched her as she talked, the way her hands moved when she got excited, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed. This woman had been my everything for 53 years. She'd stood by me when I lost my job at the factory in '85. She'd nursed me through pneumonia in '92. She'd held my hand at my mama's funeral and my daddy's funeral and my brother Leon's funeral. We'd buried friends together, raised babies together, weathered every storm that life threw at us, or so I thought. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known sitting there eating bacon and eggs in my kitchen on Chamberlain Avenue, was that Loretta had been keeping a secret so big, so unthinkable, that when I finally learned the truth, it would feel like dying without actually being dead. After breakfast, I went out to the garage to work on an old chair I'd been refinishing. Woodworking had been my hobby since I retired from the Postal Service 8 years earlier. There was something peaceful about sanding down old furniture, bringing it back to life, making something broken beautiful again. I had my little radio playing the oldies station, and I was feeling good, feeling blessed. My hands were steady on the sandpaper, and I was thinking about how I'd slow dance with Loretta that night, how I'd hold her close and thank God for giving me such a good life. Around noon, my son Marcus called to say they were running a little late, but would definitely be there by 6. I told him not to worry, told him we had all the time in the world. Then I went back to sanding that chair, humming along to Sam Cooke, completely oblivious to the fact that my world was about to fall apart. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send you a warning. It just sits there, waiting, growing, feeding on your trust until one day someone whispers the truth and everything you thought was solid turns to dust in your hands. That evening, the house filled up with people I loved. Marcus and his family arrived with balloons and presents. My daughters came with their husbands and kids. My best friend, Raymond, showed up with a bottle of cognac he'd been saving for a special occasion. Loretta's sister, Pauline, drove in from Petersburg with her husband. The dining room table was covered with food: fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, potato salad. All my favorites, all made with love, or so I believed. We ate and laughed and told old stories. Raymond reminded everyone about the time I tried to fix our plumbing and flooded the basement. Vanessa talked about how her mama used to make her and Simone matching dresses when they were little. Marcus gave a toast, raising his glass and saying, "To the 2 people who showed me what real love looks like." I looked at Loretta across the table, her eyes shining with tears, and I felt my chest tighten with emotion. 53 years. We'd made it. We'd built something real. Or had we? Because 3 weeks later, I'd be sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, feeling dizzy and confused, and he'd order blood tests that would lead to more tests, and those tests would lead to that whisper, and that whisper would lead me to a truth so devastating I'd wish I'd never walked into that hospital at all. It started small, the way most disasters do. About a week after our anniversary, I noticed I was more tired than usual. Not just regular tired, the kind where you take a nap and feel better. This was different. This was bone-deep exhaustion that made climbing the stairs feel like climbing a mountain. I'd wake up after 8 hours of sleep and feel like I hadn't slept at all. Loretta noticed it too. "You all right, Sterling?" she'd ask, her forehead creased with concern. "You look worn out." I'd brush it off, tell her I was just getting older, that 73-year-old bodies don't move like 23-year-old bodies. She'd nod and bring me a glass of sweet tea, tell me to rest. And I did rest. But the exhaustion didn't go away. It got worse. By mid-September, I was having trouble concentrating. I'd be watching TV and forget what show I was watching. I'd walk into a room and forget why I went there. Little things that scared me more than I wanted to admit. I'd seen what dementia did to my Uncle Charles, how it stole his mind piece by piece until there was nothing left but a shell. I didn't want that. I didn't want to become a burden to Loretta. Didn't want my children to have to make decisions about nursing homes and feeding tubes. One evening, I was sitting in my recliner in the living room, and my hands started trembling. Not a little shake, a full-on tremor that made the TV remote slip out of my grip and clatter to the floor. Loretta was in the kitchen, and I didn't call out to her. I just sat there, staring at my hands, watching them shake like they belonged to someone else. The tremor lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When it finally stopped, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might have a heart attack right there in my chair. I picked up the remote and tried to act normal, but I knew something was wrong, really wrong. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about my father, how he died of a stroke at 68, how he'd been perfectly fine one day and gone the next. I thought about my brother Leon, who'd fought cancer for 2 years before it finally took him at 65. Death had always felt far away, something that happened to other people, not to me. But lying there in the dark, listening to Loretta breathe beside me, I felt death creeping closer, felt its cold fingers reaching for me. And I was terrified. Not of dying. I'd made my peace with God years ago, but of leaving Loretta alone, of not being there to protect her, to hold her, to grow old with her. The next morning, I told Loretta I wanted to see a doctor. She didn't argue, didn't try to talk me out of it. She just picked up the phone and called Dr. Morrison's office, got me an appointment for that afternoon. Dr. James Morrison had been our family doctor for 20 years. He was a good man, a black man about 10 years younger than me, who'd grown up in Richmond just like I had. He knew my history, knew about my father's stroke and Leon's cancer. When I walked into his office that September afternoon, he took one look at me and frowned. "Sterling, you've lost weight," he said. I hadn't even noticed, but when I stepped on the scale, I'd dropped 15 pounds since my last checkup in May. That's when Dr. Morrison's expression changed from concerned to worried. He ran through the usual checks: blood pressure, heart rate, reflexes. Then he started asking questions. Was I having night sweats? Yes. Loss of appetite? Yes. Confusion or memory problems? Yes. The tremor? Yes. He wrote everything down in his careful handwriting, and I could see his jaw tightening with each answer. "I want to run some blood tests," he said finally. "Could be a lot of things: thyroid issues, diabetes, vitamin deficiency. But we need to rule out the serious stuff too." The serious stuff. He didn't have to say what he meant. Cancer, Parkinson's, something that had no cure, no easy fix. They drew my blood that day. 4 vials that looked too dark, too thick. The nurse, a young woman named Keisha, tried to make small talk while she worked, but I couldn't focus on her words. I was watching my blood fill those tubes and thinking about how fragile life really was. How everything we build, everything we love, can be taken away in an instant. Dr. Morrison told me he'd call with the results in a few days, told me to try not to worry. But how do you not worry when your body is betraying you, when you can feel something wrong inside you, but you don't know what it is or how to fight it? Loretta drove me home in silence. She reached over and held my hand at a stoplight, squeezed it tight. "Whatever it is, we'll deal with it together," she said, and I believed her. I trusted her. God forgive me, I trusted her completely. When we got home, she made me soup and brought it to me in the living room. She fluffed the pillows behind my back and covered me with a blanket, even though it was still warm outside. She was being so attentive, so loving, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have her. How some men went through life never finding a woman who truly cared about them. But I'd found mine. I'd found Loretta, and she'd stood by me through everything. Or so I thought. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the sickness eating away at me wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck or bad genes. It was something else entirely. Something deliberate. Something that would only become clear when Dr. Morrison leaned in close and whispered those 7 words that changed everything. The weekend passed slowly. I felt worse each day, more tired, more confused, more scared. Sunday morning, Loretta wanted me to go to church with her like we always did, but I didn't have the strength. "You go on," I told her. "I'll just rest here." She hesitated, standing in the doorway in her church dress and hat, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it concern? Or was it something else? Something I'd been too blind to see for years. "You sure?" she asked. I nodded. She kissed my forehead and left, and I spent the next 3 hours alone in that house, feeling sicker by the minute. At one point, I had to crawl to the bathroom because I was too dizzy to walk. I knelt on that cold tile floor, my head spinning, and I prayed. I prayed harder than I'd prayed in years. "Lord, if it's my time, I'm ready, but please don't let me suffer. And please take care of Loretta when I'm gone." I was crying by the time I finished, tears running down my face, snot dripping from my nose. I felt pathetic, weak, like I was already dying. When Loretta came home from church, she found me back in bed. She didn't say anything, just took off her church clothes and climbed in beside me, held me like I was a child. And for a moment, I felt safe again. For a moment, I thought maybe everything would be okay. But Monday was coming. Monday, Dr. Morrison would call with my test results. And Wednesday, I'd go back to his office to discuss what came next. Wednesday, everything I thought I knew about my life would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Wednesday, he'd whisper the truth, and I'd finally understand that sometimes the person trying to kill you is the person sleeping beside you every night. Dr. Morrison called on Monday afternoon, right after Loretta left for her book club meeting at the church. I was sitting in the kitchen, trying to eat a sandwich I had no appetite for, when the phone rang. My hand shook as I picked up the receiver. "Sterling, it's Dr. Morrison," he said, his voice careful and measured. "I got your blood work back, and I need you to come in. We need to talk about some things." My stomach dropped. That's never what you want to hear from your doctor. "Is it cancer?" I asked straight out, because I needed to know, needed to prepare myself. There was a pause, too long, too heavy. "It's complicated," he said finally. "There are some abnormalities in your blood that concern me. Your liver enzymes are elevated. Your kidney function is declining. Your white blood cell count is off. I want to run more tests, more extensive ones. Can you come in Wednesday morning?" Wednesday. 2 more days of not knowing. 2 more days of this fear eating me alive from the inside. "I'll be there," I told him. When I hung up, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. Abnormalities, elevated, declining. Those words kept circling in my head like vultures. What did it mean? What was happening to my body? When Loretta came home 2 hours later, I told her about the call. I watched her face carefully, looking for any sign of how worried I should be. She froze for just a second, such a quick moment that I almost missed it, and then her features arranged themselves into concern. "Oh, Sterling," she said, rushing over to hug me. "I'm sure it's nothing serious. Dr. Morrison is just being thorough. You know how doctors are." But her hands were trembling when she pulled away. I noticed that. I noticed how she immediately started busying herself in the kitchen, washing dishes that were already clean, wiping counters that didn't need wiping. "You'll come with me Wednesday, won't you?" I asked. She turned to look at me, and for the briefest moment, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't name it then, but I'd remember it later, turn it over in my mind 1,000 times trying to understand. "Of course," she said quickly. "Of course I'll come with you. We're in this together, remember? Together." That word felt hollow somehow, but I pushed the feeling away. This was Loretta, my wife, my partner, the woman who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health 53 years ago. Of course she'd be there. Of course she'd hold my hand through whatever came next. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed watching the shadows move across the ceiling, listening to Loretta's breathing beside me. She'd fallen asleep almost immediately, which surprised me. If I just found out my spouse was sick, I'd be up all night worrying. But there she was, sleeping soundly, peacefully, like nothing was wrong. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and went downstairs. The house was dark and quiet, and I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, touching things. The mantel where our wedding photo sat, the couch where we'd watched 1,000 movies, the dining room table where we'd shared 1,000 meals. Every object held a memory. This house was our life, our history, everything we built together. And now that history might be ending. Now I might be dying, and all these things would remain, but I wouldn't. The thought terrified me, not the dying itself, but the leaving, the not being here, the world continuing without me. I sat down in my recliner and must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, Loretta was shaking my shoulder. "Sterling, honey, you're going to hurt your neck sleeping in that chair," she said. The morning sun was streaming through the windows. Tuesday. One more day until the appointment that would start unraveling everything. Tuesday crawled by like a wounded animal. I tried to keep busy, tried not to think about Wednesday, but every task felt meaningless. I went out to the garage to work on that chair I'd been refinishing, but my hands were shaking too much to hold the sandpaper steady. I came back inside and tried to watch TV, but I couldn't follow the plots. Everything felt distant, underwater, like I was already separating from the world. Loretta spent the day cooking, a pot roast with potatoes and carrots, my favorite meal. The smell filled the house, should have made me hungry, but instead it made me nauseous. When she called me for dinner, I sat at the table and pushed the food around my plate, managing only a few bites. "You need to eat," Loretta said, her voice sharp with something that might have been concern or might have been something else. I tried to smile, tried to reassure her, but the words stuck in my throat. After dinner, our daughter Vanessa called. She'd heard from Loretta about the doctor's appointment and wanted to know if she should come down from D.C. "No, baby," I told her. "It's probably nothing. No need to worry yet." But I could hear the fear in her voice, and it broke my heart. I'd always been strong for my children, always been the one who fixed things, who made everything okay. Now I was the problem that needed fixing, and I didn't know how to be that person. That night, Loretta and I sat in the living room, not really watching whatever was on TV, just existing in the same space. She was knitting, something she did when she was nervous, and I was pretending to read the newspaper, but the words swam on the page. Around 9 o'clock, she put down her knitting and came over to sit on the arm of my chair. She ran her fingers through my hair, something she hadn't done in years. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said softly, "I want you to know I love you. I've always loved you." There was something in her voice, something that made me look up at her. Her eyes were wet with tears, and she looked older somehow, tired. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it with everything in me. She leaned down and kissed me, a long, deep kiss that tasted like goodbye. Then she went upstairs to bed. I stayed in my chair for another hour, that kiss lingering on my lips, and I had this strange feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall, but I couldn't see the bottom. Wednesday morning came too fast. I barely slept, and when dawn broke, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Every muscle ached. My head pounded. My mouth was so dry I could barely swallow. Loretta brought me coffee and toast, but I couldn't stomach either. "We should leave soon," she said, checking her watch. "The appointment is at 10. I got dressed slowly, my hands fumbling with buttons, my legs weak. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. Gaunt, gray, defeated. This wasn't me. This wasn't Sterling Whitmore, who'd worked 2 jobs to buy his first house, who'd raised 3 successful children, who'd lived a good, honorable life. This was a stranger, a dying stranger. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a question whispered that I couldn't quite hear yet. How did I get here? How did I get sick so fast? But I'd have my answer soon enough. In just a few hours, Dr. Morrison would pull me aside and whisper 7 words that would make me question everything. Every meal Loretta had cooked, every drink she'd handed me, every "I love you" she'd spoken. In just a few hours, the truth would come for me like a storm, and there'd be nowhere left to hide. The waiting room at Dr. Morrison's office felt like a tomb. Loretta sat beside me, her purse clutched in her lap, her face a mask of calm I didn't trust anymore, though I didn't know why yet. Other patients filled the chairs around us, an elderly woman with a walker, a young mother with a coughing child, a man my age reading a magazine with hands that trembled like mine. We were all here because our bodies had betrayed us, because something inside us was breaking down. But I was the only one whose betrayal went deeper than flesh and bone. The receptionist called my name, and Loretta stood up with me. "Mrs. Whitmore, you can wait here," the nurse said gently. "The doctor wants to speak with Mr. Whitmore privately first, then he'll call you in." I saw Loretta's face tighten, saw her mouth open to protest, but then she just nodded and sat back down. I followed the nurse down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever, fluorescent lights humming overhead like they were mourning something. She led me to an examination room and took my vitals, blood pressure high, heart rate elevated, temperature slightly below normal. "The doctor will be with you shortly," she said, and then I was alone. I sat on that examination table, paper crinkling beneath me, and I prayed. Not the eloquent prayers I'd learned in church, but desperate, scattered pleas. Please don't let it be cancer. Please don't let me die slowly. Please give me more time with my family. Please, God, please. The door opened and Dr. Morrison walked in carrying a thick folder. My file, I assumed, full of test results and diagnoses and maybe a death sentence. His face was grave and he didn't meet my eyes right away. That's when I knew it was bad, really bad. Sterling, he said, sitting down on the rolling stool across from me. I'm going to be honest with you. Your blood work is concerning, very concerning. He opened the folder and showed me charts and numbers that meant nothing to me. Your liver is showing signs of damage consistent with toxic exposure. Your kidneys are functioning at about 60% capacity. You have heavy metals in your system, specifically arsenic, at levels that could be lethal if exposure continues. Arsenic. The word hung in the air like smoke. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. How would I be exposed to arsenic? Dr. Morrison leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes finally meeting mine. That's what I need to figure out. Have you been working with any chemicals, old paint, pesticides, anything at work or at home? I shook my head. I've been retired for 8 years. I didn't use pesticides in the yard. Loretta had always handled the garden. I hadn't painted anything or worked with chemicals. No, I said. Nothing like that. Dr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. Then he asked a question that made my blood freeze. Sterling, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer. Has anyone had access to your food or drinks? Someone who might have a reason to want you sick? The implication hit me like a physical blow. What are you saying? I asked, but I knew. God help me. Somewhere deep down, I already knew. I'm saying that arsenic poisoning at these levels, with this progression, doesn't usually happen by accident. It's consistent with repeated, intentional exposure over weeks or months. Someone has been poisoning you, Sterling. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the examination table to keep from falling off. That's not possible, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I live with my wife. We've been married 53 years. She couldn't, but even as I said it, images were flashing through my mind. Loretta bringing me coffee every morning. Loretta cooking all my meals. Loretta handing me my evening whiskey, always so careful to pour it herself. Loretta asking if I wanted sugar in my tea, stirring it for me. All those small acts of service I thought were love. Were they? Or were they something else entirely? Dr. Morrison stood up and walked to the door. He opened it slightly, checking the hallway, then closed it again and locked it. That's when I knew he was about to tell me something that could get him in trouble. Something he wasn't supposed to say. He came back and stood in front of me, so close I could see the fear in his eyes. Sterling, he said quietly, I'm going to break doctor-patient confidentiality rules here, but I think your life depends on it. You're not the first patient I've seen with unexplained arsenic poisoning. 3 years ago, I had another patient, a man about your age with the exact same symptoms. By the time we figured out what was happening, it was too late. His wife had been poisoning him for insurance money. He died 6 weeks after his diagnosis. The air left my lungs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I did some research after you called, Dr. Morrison continued, his voice barely above a whisper now. I looked into your wife's background. Sterling, did you know Loretta worked as a pharmacy technician before you got married? Did you know she has extensive knowledge of medications and toxins? I didn't know. In 53 years of marriage, Loretta had never mentioned working in a pharmacy. She told me she'd worked as a secretary before we met. Why had she lied? Why had she hidden that? Dr. Morrison pulled his stool closer, so close our knees were almost touching. His hand was on my shoulder, and I could feel it trembling. This was hard for him, too, breaking the rules, accusing someone of attempted murder, putting himself in legal jeopardy. But he was doing it anyway because he thought he was saving my life. I can't prove anything, he said. I can't call the police without concrete evidence, and even if I could, it might put you in more danger. But I'm telling you right now, as your doctor and as someone who cares about you, do not eat or drink anything Loretta prepares for you. Do not tell her about this conversation. Act normal until you can figure out what to do next. Because if she knows you know, Sterling. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. If Loretta was poisoning me and found out I knew, she might finish the job. Quickly. Permanently. The man I trusted my life to, the man who'd taken an oath to do no harm, was looking at me with such pity and fear that I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded. "There's one more thing," Dr. Morrison said. He glanced at the door again, then back at me. That's when he leaned in. That's when he got so close I could smell the mint on his breath. That's when he whispered the 7 words that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my life, my reality. "She took out a policy on you recently." The words were so quiet I almost didn't hear them, but once they entered my ears, they exploded in my brain like grenades. An insurance policy. Recent. Loretta had taken out a life insurance policy on without telling me, while I was dying, while she was poisoning me. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice cracking. Dr. Morrison pulled back. His face was flushed with shame. "I shouldn't have looked. It's not ethical. But when I suspected what was happening, I have a friend who works in insurance. I asked him to check. Sterling, the policy is for $500,000. It was taken out 6 months ago, right after your last checkup, when you were perfectly healthy. Is Loretta. Only Loretta. 6 months. This had been planned for 6 months. Every morning coffee, every home-cooked meal, every "I love you" whispered in the dark. All of it had been leading to this, to my death, to $500,000, to freedom for a woman who decided, after 53 years, that she was done being my wife. The examination room was spinning. I felt like I was going to vomit. "I need you to leave that hospital and act like nothing happened," Dr. Morrison said urgently. "I'm going to give you some medication that will help your body process the arsenic, but you need to take it secretly. Hide the pills. Don't let her see them. And Sterling," he gripped my shoulders hard now, forcing me to look at him, "you need to start planning how to get away from her. Call your children. Call a lawyer. But do not confront her alone. Women who poison rarely stop until they finish what they started." Dr. Morrison opened the door and called Loretta in, and I had to watch her walk down that hallway with a concerned smile on her face. Had to watch her sit down next to me and take my hand like she cared, like she hadn't been feeding me poison for months. "How is he, doctor?" she asked, her voice dripping with false worry. I wanted to scream, wanted to grab her by the shoulders and demand to know why. Why would you do this to me? Why would you kill the man who loved you? But I sat there silent, numb, while Dr. Morrison played his part perfectly. "Sterling's blood work shows some abnormalities," he said carefully, not meeting Loretta's eyes. "Kidney and liver function are declined. Could be age-related. Could be dietary. I'm prescribing some supplements and will recheck in a month." He scribbled on a prescription pad, tore off the sheet, and handed it to me. Not to Loretta, to me. Our eyes met for a split second, and I saw the warning there. "Hide these. Take them secretly. Survive." "Is it serious?" Loretta asked, and I swear I heard eagerness in her voice, like she was hoping he'd say yes. "Yes, it's very serious. He'll be dead in weeks." "It's manageable," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "Sterling just needs to be careful about what he eats and drinks. Plenty of water. Avoid alcohol for now." He looked at me again. "And Sterling, I want you to keep a food diary. Write down everything you eat and drink, when you eat it, how you feel afterward. Can you do that for me?" A food diary. He was giving me a way to document the poisoning, to build evidence. I nodded. "I can do that." Loretta stood up, smoothing her dress, ready to leave. She was already moving on, already planning how long she'd have to wait before upping the dosage, before finishing me off. "Thank you, doctor," she said sweetly. "We really appreciate you taking such good care of Sterling." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. Dr. Morrison walked us to the door, and just before we left, he shook my hand. His grip was tight, urgent. "Take care of yourself, Sterling," he said, and the weight of those words, the layers of meaning, almost broke me. "If you need anything, anything at all, you call this office immediately, day or night. You understand?" I understood. He was giving me a lifeline. A way out. But first, I had to survive the drive home. I had to survive whatever Loretta had planned for lunch. I had to survive long enough to figure out how to escape a trap that had been 53 years in the making. The walk to the car felt like walking through quicksand. Everything was moving in slow motion. The other cars in the parking lot, the trees swaying in the breeze, Loretta's hand on my arm guiding me like I was an invalid. She was being so solicitous, so caring, and it was all a lie. Every gesture, every touch, every word out of her mouth was poison dressed up as love. She drove us home, chattering about how relieved she was that it wasn't serious, how we'd get through this like we'd gotten through everything else. I looked out the window and didn't respond. Couldn't respond. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of the last 6 months. When had it started? When had Loretta decided I was worth more dead than alive? Was it after our anniversary? Before? Had she lain next to me at night, planning my murder while I slept? Had she smiled at our grandchildren while calculating how much longer she'd have to wait? The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This was the woman who'd held my hand when my mother died. This was the woman who'd kissed my tears when I lost my job. This was the woman who'd stood in a church 53 years ago and promised to love me until death did us part. I guess she just decided to speed up that last part. When we pulled into our driveway on Chamberlain Avenue, I looked at our house, the house I'd bought with pride, the house I'd maintained with care, the house where I thought I'd die peacefully in my sleep someday, and it looked different, sinister, like a prison or a tomb. Loretta helped me inside, settled me in my recliner like I was fragile. "I'm going to make you some lunch," she said. "You need to eat something." My stomach turned. Lunch, another opportunity to poison me, another step closer to that $500,000. "I'm not hungry," I said, and it was true. The thought of food made me want to vomit. She frowned. "Sterling, you have to eat. Doctor's orders." She disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard her moving around, opening cabinets, running water. What was she putting in my food right now? How much arsenic? Was today the day she decided to give me a lethal dose? I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the bathroom. I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. In the medicine cabinet, behind the antacids and Band-Aids, I hid the prescription Dr. Morrison had given me. Small white pills that would help my body flush out the poison. I'd have to take them secretly, probably in the middle of the night when Loretta was asleep. I looked at myself in the mirror again, that hollow-eyed stranger staring back at me, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to die. Not like this. Not by the hand of the woman I'd loved for over half a century. I was going to survive. And then I was going to find out why. Why would Loretta do this? What had I done to make her hate me enough to kill me? I came back to the living room, and Loretta was there with a tray, soup, crackers, a glass of lemonade. My favorite lemonade that she made from scratch with real lemons and sugar. Was there arsenic in it? In the soup? How could I refuse without making her suspicious? "Thank you, baby," I said, taking the tray with trembling hands. I set it on the TV tray beside my chair. "I'll eat in a bit. Just need to rest my eyes for a minute." She hesitated, standing over me, watching me. Was she disappointed I wasn't eating right away? Was she calculating how long she could wait before insisting? "Okay," she said finally, "but don't let it get cold." She walked upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. The moment she was gone, I picked up the soup bowl and walked quickly to the bathroom. I poured it down the toilet, flushed. The lemonade went next. I tell her I ate, tell her it was delicious, tell her whatever she needed to hear to buy myself time. The crackers I wrapped in toilet paper and shoved deep in the bathroom trash. Then I went back to my chair and lay down, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. This was my life now. Pretending to eat poison, hiding medication, sleeping next to a woman who wanted me dead. How long could I keep this up? How long before I slipped, before she noticed I wasn't getting sicker, before she realized I knew? That night, I barely touched dinner, told Loretta my stomach was upset from the medication. She accepted it, but I saw the frustration in her eyes, the calculation. She was wondering why I wasn't deteriorating faster. The next morning would be worse, and the morning after that. Every day I didn't eat her food was a day closer to her figuring out that I knew. And then what? Would she try something faster? More violent? Would I wake up one night to find a pillow over my face? The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across our living room. 53 years of marriage was ending not with love or peace, but with arsenic and lies and a whispered warning from a doctor who'd broken the rules to save my life. And as I sat there in that house that had become my prison, I finally understood what Dr. Morrison's whisper had really meant. It wasn't just about the insurance policy. It wasn't just a warning about poison. Those 7 words, "She took out a policy on you recently," were a revelation about the woman I'd married, about the life I thought we'd built, about the 53 years I thought were filled with love. They were all a lie. Every single one of them. And now I had to figure out how to survive long enough to learn the truth. Why did the woman who promised to love me forever decide I was better off dead? What had I missed? What signs had I been too blind to see? But those answers would have to wait, because right now, survival was all that mattered. And survival meant pretending nothing had changed while everything had changed. It meant sleeping next to my would-be murderer. It meant living in fear every single moment of every single day. That was my new reality. That's what my life had become the moment a doctor leaned in close and whispered the truth I never wanted to hear. The first week after Dr. Morrison's whisper was the longest week of my life. Every morning, I woke up next to Loretta and had to pretend I didn't know she was trying to kill me. Every meal, I had to find ways to avoid eating her food without raising suspicion. I started saying I'd picked up a sandwich on my walk. Walks I forced myself to take even though my body was screaming for rest, just so I'd have an excuse to eat elsewhere. I poured coffee down the sink when she wasn't looking. I dumped glasses of lemonade into the potted plants. I became a liar in my own home, and the irony wasn't lost on me. She'd been lying for 6 months or more, and now I was lying right back, both of us performing this sick dance where we pretended everything was normal while death hung in the air between us like humidity before a storm. At night, after she fell asleep, I'd sneak to the bathroom and take those pills Dr. Morrison prescribed. I'd stand there in the dark, swallowing them dry, praying they were working, praying my kidneys and liver could recover before it was too late. Then I'd climb back into bed next to my would-be murderer and lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering how many other wives had done this. How many men had died never knowing the woman they loved had killed them. I started keeping that food diary Dr. Morrison asked for, but not the way Loretta thought. I kept 2 journals. One I left on the kitchen counter where she could see it, filled with lies about eating her meals and feeling fine. The other I hid in the garage, wrapped in an old rag inside my toolbox, and in that one I wrote the truth. October 3rd, Loretta made pancakes, said I ate them, actually fed them to the neighbor's dog. Dog is fine. October 4th, Loretta insisted I drink her special tea for my health, poured it in the sink while she was in the bathroom. October 5th, she's getting frustrated. I can see it in her eyes. She's wondering why I'm not getting worse. That hidden journal became my evidence, my proof, my insurance policy against her insurance policy. Every entry was dated, timed, detailed. If something happened to me, if she found another way to finish the job, at least there'd be a record. At least someone would know. I thought about calling my children, especially Marcus, but what would I say? Your mother is poisoning me? They'd think I'd lost my mind. They'd think the sickness had gotten to my brain. And maybe they'd be right to think that. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe Dr. Morrison had made a mistake, jumped to conclusions, saw patterns that weren't there. But then I'd look at Loretta and see the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking, see the calculations behind her eyes, and I'd know. I'd know with every fiber of my being that I was living with someone who wanted me dead. The second week, things got worse. I was feeling better. The medication was working. My body was healing now that I wasn't ingesting poison daily. And Loretta noticed. You seem to have more energy, she said one morning, her voice tight. That's good, isn't it? But it wasn't good to her. It was a problem, a complication. Her plan was failing and she knew it. That night, she made my favorite meal. Fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread. The whole house smelled like Sunday dinner. And she served it to me with such a loving smile that for one insane second, I wanted to believe I was wrong. I wanted to believe this was just my wife, cooking for her husband, showing love the way she'd always shown it. But then I saw her hand trembling as she set the plate down, saw the sweat on her upper lip despite the cool evening, and I knew this meal was different. This meal was loaded with enough poison to finish what she'd started. "Baby, this looks amazing," I said, picking up my fork. She sat down across from me, not eating, just watching, waiting. "I worked hard on it," she said. "I know you've been feeling poorly, so I wanted to make something special, something that would make you feel loved." Loved. That word from her mouth made me want to vomit. "I do feel loved," I lied. "You take such good care of me." Her smile widened, and I saw something ugly underneath it, something I'd been too blind to see for 53 years. I took a bite of cornbread, just one bite, and made a show of savoring it. Then I stood up. "You know what? I need to use the bathroom," I said. "This meal is so good, I don't want to rush it." I walked to the bathroom with that plate, locked the door, and scraped every bit of food into the toilet. Flushed it away along with any illusions I'd had left about my marriage. When I came back, I carried the empty plate. "That was delicious," I told her. "Best meal you've made in years." I watched her face fall, watched confusion and then anger flash across her features before she controlled it. "You ate it all?" she asked. "You weren't that hungry at breakfast." "Your cooking brought my appetite back," I said, sitting down in my recliner. "I feel better already." It was cruel what I was doing, giving her hope and then yanking it away. But she'd been giving me poison disguised as love for months, so maybe we were even. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to Loretta breathe, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. She wasn't going to stop. She'd committed to this path, invested 6 months of careful poisoning, taken out that insurance policy, and now she was pot committed, as they say in poker. She had to see it through, which meant I needed to do something I'd been avoiding. I needed to confront this. Not her. Not yet. But the truth. I needed to find out why. Why would a woman stay married for 53 years only to kill her husband? What had I done? What had I missed? The next morning, after Loretta left for her volunteer shift at the church food bank, and, oh, the irony of that, a woman who volunteered feeding the hungry while poisoning her husband, I started searching. I went through our bedroom, looking for anything that might explain this. Bank statements hidden in her underwear drawer showed nothing unusual. Her jewelry box held only jewelry. But then I found her purse, the big brown leather one she carried everywhere, and inside it was a cell phone I'd never seen before. A second phone. A secret phone. My hands shook as I turned it on. It was password protected, but I knew Loretta. I knew her patterns. I tried our wedding anniversary. Wrong. Our children's birthdays. Wrong. Then, on a hunch that made my stomach turn, I tried the date 6 months ago, the date she'd taken out that insurance policy. The phone unlocked, and what I found inside destroyed what was left of my heart. Text messages, dozens of them, hundreds, all to a number saved under the name D. And the messages weren't about poison or murder or insurance money. They were love letters. "Can't wait to be with you," Loretta had written. "Just a little longer, and we'll have everything we need." And the responses from D: "I love you. Be patient. Soon we'll be in Florida, just you and me. No more pretending." I sat on our bed, reading message after message, watching my marriage dissolve into pixels and lies. Loretta had a lover. After 53 years, my wife had fallen in love with someone else, someone named D. And instead of asking for a divorce, instead of having the decency to just leave me, she decided it was easier, more profitable, to kill me. The phone slipped from my hands, and I put my face in my palms, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since my mother died. I cried for the years I'd wasted, for the trust I'd given so freely, for the man I'd been who believed in love and loyalty until death do us part. That man was gone now, dead, murdered by the same woman who was trying to murder me. I put Loretta's secret phone back exactly where I'd found it, but I took pictures of those text messages with my own phone, evidence I'd need later. Then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called my son Marcus. "Dad?" He answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" No, I wanted to scream. "Nothing is okay. Your mother is trying to kill me for a man named D and $500,000. But instead I said, I need you to come visit. Soon. Don't tell your mother. Just come." There was a pause. "Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I'll explain when you get here," I said. "But Marcus, I need you to trust me. Come alone. Don't bring the family. Just you." Another pause, longer this time. "I can be there tomorrow," he said finally. I'll leave early, be there by noon. Thank you, son. After I hung up, I felt a weight lift slightly. I wasn't alone anymore. Soon I'd have an ally, someone who loved me, someone who'd help me figure out what to do next. But first, I had to survive one more night with Loretta. One more night of pretending. One more night in this house of lies. She came home around 4 o'clock, her face flushed from the autumn cold, carrying a bag of groceries. I'm making pot roast tonight, she announced cheerfully, with those little potatoes you like. More poison, wrapped in the language of love. Sounds perfect, I said, and I meant it. Because I knew now that I wouldn't have to eat it. I knew that tomorrow, Marcus would be here, and together we'd figure out how to end this nightmare. But that night, before dinner, something happened that almost ended everything right there. I was in the garage, pretending to work on that chair I'd been refinishing for months, when Loretta came out. She was holding 2 glasses of whiskey, my evening ritual, the drink I'd skipped for weeks now, claiming the doctor said to avoid alcohol. Sterling, she said softly, I think one drink won't hurt. You've been so stressed. This will help you relax. She held out the glass, amber liquid catching the overhead light, and I saw her hand was steady now, confident. This wasn't a request. This was a challenge. She knew. Somehow she knew I'd been avoiding her food, avoiding her drinks, avoiding death, and now she was forcing the issue. Baby, the doctor said. I started, but she cut me off. The doctor doesn't know everything, she said, her voice harder now. I'm your wife. I've taken care of you for 53 years. I think I know what's best for you. She stepped closer, pushing the glass toward my chest. Drink it, Sterling. For me. We stood there in that garage, surrounded by sawdust and old tools and half-finished projects, and I realized this was it. This was the moment where I either took the drink and probably died, or I refused, and she'd know for certain that I knew. Either way, the pretending was over. So I made a choice. I took the glass, raised it to my lips, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, You first. Her face went white. What? You drink first, I said quietly. Show me it's safe. Show me you're not trying to kill me, Loretta. The garage fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the corner. Loretta's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Sterling, that's ridiculous. Why would I? Drink it, I said again, louder now. If there's nothing wrong with it, if you're just trying to help your husband relax, then drink it. Right now, in front of me. She took a step back, and the glass in her hand was shaking now, whiskey sloshing near the rim. You've lost your mind, she whispered. The sickness has gotten to your brain. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I've finally seen what's been in front of me all along. I set my glass down on the workbench. I know about the arsenic, Loretta. I know about the insurance policy. I know you've been poisoning me for months. The glass fell from her hand, shattered on the concrete floor, whiskey and glass shards spreading like blood. And then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. It was a horrible sound, that laugh, high and broken and edged with hysteria. You know, she said, not a question, but a statement. You know, and you're still here. You didn't go to the police. You didn't tell the children. You just stayed. She was right. Why had I stayed? Why hadn't I run, called the cops, exposed her? Maybe because part of me still hoped I was wrong. Or maybe because after 53 years, even poisoned love is hard to walk away from. Who is Dee? I asked. Her face changed, softened almost, and I saw something I'd never seen in my wife's eyes before when she looked at me. Not love, not even hate, but pity. You want to know everything? She asked. You want to know why I'd throw away 53 years? Why I'd rather see you dead than just leave? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Loretta walked to the corner of the garage, leaned against my workbench, and started talking. And what she told me in that dusty garage, surrounded by the smell of sawdust and whiskey and shattered glass, was worse than the poisoning, worse than the betrayal. It was the truth. And the truth, I learned that night, was the most lethal poison of all. Her name is Denise, Loretta said quietly. My college roommate, the woman I loved before I ever met you. The words hit me like bullets. Her, not him. Dee wasn't a man. Dee was a woman. Loretta wasn't just cheating. She'd been living a lie for 53 years. I was 20 years old when I met you, Sterling. 20 years old and terrified of who I really was. It was 1971. You know what happened to women like me back then? We were sick, sinful. My own family would have disowned me. So when you came along, kind, decent, hardworking Sterling who loved me, I made a choice. I married you. I buried who I was. I played the role of wife, mother, church lady. I played it so well I almost believed it myself. She wiped tears from her face, and I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. But Denise never forgot me. And 2 years ago, she found me on Facebook. We started talking. Old friends catching up, that's all it was at first. But then it became more. She told me she'd never married, never found anyone else. She'd been waiting. For me. The garage was spinning. Nothing made sense. So leave me, I said, my voice breaking. Get a divorce. You didn't have to kill me. You don't understand, Loretta said, and now there was anger in her voice. I gave you 53 years. I gave you my youth, my body, 3 children. I earned that insurance money, Sterling. I earned my freedom. A divorce means splitting everything, means lawyers and judgments and half of what we built. But your death means I get everything. The house, the savings, the insurance, everything I need to start over with the woman I should have been with all along. It was the coldest thing I'd ever heard, the cruelest calculation. 53 years of marriage reduced to a balance sheet, and I'd been found wanting. Not worth the hassle of a divorce, worth more dead than alive. You're a monster, I whispered. She shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of sleeping next to a man I don't love. Tired of this life that was never mine. She pushed off the workbench and walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at me. I'm not sorry, Sterling. I did what I had to do to survive. Just like you're doing now. The only difference is I'm better at it. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in that garage with broken glass and broken promises and the broken pieces of a life I thought was whole. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay in the guest bedroom. I'd moved there after the garage confrontation, claiming my back hurt, needing space. And I replayed Loretta's confession over and over. 53 years of marriage had been a lie. Not all of it, maybe. She'd loved our children, I believed that. But me? I'd been a cover story, a beard, a means to an end. And now I was an obstacle to her real happiness, so I needed to be removed, permanently. Around 3 a.m, I heard her moving around downstairs, cabinets opening and closing, water running. Was she making more poison, planning her next move? Or maybe packing, getting ready to run? I got up and crept to the top of the stairs, listening. She was on the phone, her voice low and urgent. Tomorrow, she was saying. I'll figure it out tomorrow. He knows, Denise. He knows everything, but he hasn't told anyone yet. If I move fast. She stopped talking, listening to whoever Denise was, this woman who'd helped plan my murder from wherever she lived. I love you too, Loretta whispered finally. Soon. I promise. Soon. The phone clicked off and I heard her climb the stairs. I scrambled back to the guest room and closed the door silently. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might wake her. She knew I knew, and she was going to figure it out tomorrow. Figure out how to finish killing me before I could expose her. I had maybe 12 hours to live. Marcus arrived at 11:30 the next morning, pulling into the driveway in his silver Honda, and I've never been so relieved to see anyone in my life. I met him at the door before Loretta could, pulled him into the garage, the scene of yesterday's confrontation, still smelling faintly of whiskey. Dad, what the hell is going on? Marcus asked, and I could see the worry etched deep in his face. He looked like me, my son, same broad forehead, same dark eyes, same stubborn jaw. But he had his mother's smile. I wondered if that would change after today. I told him everything. Started with the hospital visit and Dr. Morrison's whisper, and didn't stop until I'd laid out the whole ugly truth. The arsenic poisoning, the insurance policy, Loretta's secret lover, the 53 years of lies, last night's garage confession. I showed him the pictures I'd taken of the text messages. I showed him my hidden food diary. I watched my son's face as his whole world crumbled, as he realized his mother was a murderer, as he understood that the family he'd grown up in had been built on sand and secrets. When I finished, Marcus just stood there, staring at the floor. Then he looked up at me with tears streaming down his face and said, "We need to call the police. Right now." But before we could, the garage door opened. Loretta stood there, and she was holding a gun. I didn't even know we had a gun. In 53 years of marriage, I'd never seen a weapon in our house. But there she was, my wife of more than 5 decades, pointing a pistol at her husband and her son with hands that didn't shake at all. "I knew you'd call him," she said to me. "I knew you couldn't keep your mouth shut." Her eyes shifted to Marcus. "Baby, I'm sorry you have to see this, but your father is sick, confused. He's been saying crazy things, accusing me of terrible things. He's not in his right mind." "Mom, put the gun down," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. "Dad told me everything. I know about Denise. I know what you did. Please just put the gun down and we can figure this out." Loretta laughed that same horrible laugh from yesterday. "Figure what out? How to send your mother to prison? How to destroy our family?" She was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body, but the gun stayed level, pointing at my chest. "I gave everything to this family, everything, and all I wanted was a little happiness at the end, a few years to be who I really am. Was that so wrong?" "Killing Dad is wrong," Marcus shouted. 53 years together, and you were going to poison him, let him die slowly, and cash in? How could you? How could I?" Loretta's voice rose to a scream. "How could I live a lie for 53 years? How could I let my family tell me I was sick, sinful, wrong? How could I sleep next to a man I didn't love, let him touch me, bear his children, all because I was too afraid to be myself? You want to know how I could? Because I didn't have a choice then. But I have a choice now." The gun was shaking now, and I realized she was going to pull the trigger. She'd come this far, confessed everything, and the only way out was through my dead body. I stepped in front of Marcus, blocking him with my body. If she was going to shoot, she'd have to shoot me first. "Loretta," I said softly, "I forgive you." Her eyes widened. "What?" "I forgive you," I said again, "for the lies, for the poison, for all of it. I understand now. You were trapped. You did what you thought you had to do. But baby, it's not too late. Put the gun down. Let's talk to someone. Let's figure out how to end this without anyone else getting hurt." For a moment, just a moment, I saw the woman I'd married. The scared 20-year-old girl who'd said yes to my proposal because she didn't know what else to do. The woman who tried so hard to be something she wasn't. And I felt sorry for her. Sorry for both of us. Sorry for the life we'd wasted trying to be people we weren't. But then her face hardened, and I knew. Forgiveness wasn't enough. Nothing would be enough. She'd made her choice, and she was going to see it through. The gun rose higher, aimed at my head now instead of my chest, and I closed my eyes and prayed. Not for myself, I'd made my peace, but for Marcus, standing behind me, for my daughters who'd have to live with this, for Denise, who'd never know the woman she loved was capable of this, and for Loretta, who'd been lost for so long she'd forgotten how to find her way home. The gunshot never came. Instead, I heard a crash, a scream, and opened my eyes to see Raymond, my best friend Raymond, tackling Loretta to the ground. The gun skittered across the garage floor, and Marcus dove for it, secured it. "Raymond?" I said stupidly, not understanding. "How?" "Your boy called me from the driveway," Raymond said, breathing hard, kneeling on Loretta's back while she thrashed and screamed beneath him. "Told me to get here fast. Good thing I only live 3 streets over." Marcus was on his phone, calling 911, his voice shaking as he told the dispatcher we needed police, needed them now. I slumped against the wall, my legs giving out, and I watched Loretta crying on that garage floor, not crying for what she'd done, crying because she'd been caught. 53 years, I said to her. "Did you ever love me, even a little?" She turned her head, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, and said, "I tried to. God knows I tried. But you can't force love, Sterling. You can only fake it for so long." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, and somehow that made it hurt worse. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 squad cars, lights flashing, neighbors coming out of their houses to see what was happening at the Whitmore place. I watched officers put handcuffs on my wife, and read her rights. Watched them load her into the back of a patrol car. Watched 53 years of marriage end in flashing blue lights and staring neighbors and the kind of shame that burrows into your bones and never leaves. One of the officers, a young black woman with kind eyes, took my statement. I told her everything, the poisoning, the insurance policy, the secret phone, the confession. Marcus backed up every word, showed her the pictures on my phone. Raymond confirmed what he'd witnessed. By the time the sun set that October evening, Loretta wasn't my wife anymore. She was suspect number one in an attempted murder case. The officer gave me Dr. Morrison's number. They'd need to coordinate on the medical evidence. She gave me a card for a lawyer. She told me I was safe now, that Loretta would be held without bail given the flight risk and the danger she posed. But I didn't feel safe. I felt destroyed, hollowed out. Like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me human, left just a shell standing there in that garage. After the police left, after the neighbors went back inside, after the excitement died down, it was just me and Marcus and Raymond in that house on Chamberlain Avenue. The house that had been my home for 53 years but felt like a stranger's house now. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "come stay with us. In Durham. You shouldn't be here alone." But I shook my head. "I need to do this, son. Need to face this. Your sisters will be here tomorrow. They deserve to know in person. And I need to start figuring out what comes next." What came next was a nightmare of lawyers and court dates and media attention. The story made the local news. Elderly woman arrested for poisoning husband, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about Sterling and Loretta Whitmore. The church was in shock. Friends called, not knowing what to say. My daughters flew in from D.C. and Atlanta, and I had to watch their hearts break as they realized their mother was a would-be murderer. We all sat in that living room, the four of us, me, Marcus, Vanessa, and Simone, and we cried together. Cried for the family we thought we were. Cried for the lies we'd believed. Cried for a woman who'd been so lost, she thought murder was the only way out. The preliminary hearing was 3 weeks later. I sat in that courtroom and watched Loretta's lawyer try to claim she was mentally ill, that the poison was a cry for help, that she never really meant to kill me. But the evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Morrison testified about the arsenic levels in my blood. The police had found Loretta's stash, rat poison, hidden in the pantry behind the flour. They'd found the secret phone, the text messages, the insurance policy. They'd interviewed Denise, who claimed she didn't know about the poisoning, said she thought Loretta was just going to divorce me. Maybe that was true. Maybe Denise really was innocent. Or maybe she was just a better liar than Loretta. Either way, the judge ruled there was enough evidence to proceed to trial, and Loretta was going to prison. Maybe not for attempted murder. Her lawyer was negotiating a plea deal, but for assault, for reckless endangerment, for something that would keep her locked up for years. And I sat there in that courtroom, watching the woman I'd spent my life with in an orange jumpsuit and chains, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness. Just the vast, aching emptiness of a life that had been real to me but fake to her, of love that had been one-sided for 53 years, of a man who thought he knew his wife and discovered he'd never known her at all. It's been 8 months since that day in the garage. 8 months since Loretta was arrested. 8 months since my life exploded, and I had to figure out how to build a new one from the pieces. Loretta took a plea deal, 15 years for attempted murder and fraud. She'll be 76 when she gets out, if she gets out. Her lawyer tried to get me to speak on her behalf, asked for leniency, but I couldn't do it. Not because I hate her, I don't, not anymore, but because she needs to face consequences. She needs to understand that you can't murder your way to happiness. Denise disappeared after the trial, moved somewhere down south, from what I heard. I don't know if she writes to Loretta in prison. I don't know if they still believe they're soulmates. I don't care. That's their story to live with, not mine. My story now is about healing, about learning to trust again, about figuring out who Sterling Whitmore is when he's not someone's husband, not someone's mark, just himself. I go to therapy twice a week. Dr. Jenkins, a woman about my age who's seen it all and somehow still believes people can change, can heal. She tells me it's okay to grieve the marriage even though it was based on lies. She tells me it's okay to feel angry, betrayed, foolish. She tells me I survived, and that's enough. Some days I believe her. Some days I don't. My kids check on me constantly. Marcus calls every other day. Vanessa and Simone take turns visiting. They brought the grandkids last month, and for a few hours the house felt alive again. Felt like maybe it could be a home and not just a museum of lies. I'm thinking of selling it, moving closer to Marcus in Durham, starting completely fresh somewhere new. But I'm not ready yet. There are still ghosts here I need to make peace with. Raymond still comes by, still brings that bottle of cognac we never finished. We sit on the porch some evenings, not talking much, just being. That's what real friendship looks like. Someone who shows up when your world falls apart, who tackles your wife to save your life, who doesn't need words to understand pain. He lost his own wife to cancer 5 years ago, so he knows about grief, knows about moving forward when everything you thought was solid turns to dust. You're going to be all right, Sterling, he told me last week. It don't feel like it now, but you will. I'm starting to believe him. Maybe it's the therapy. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's just that pain can't last forever. Eventually it fades to a dull ache you learn to live with. Dr. Morrison says my liver and kidneys are almost back to normal. The arsenic is out of my system. Physically, I've healed. The tremor stopped. The confusion cleared. I've even gained back the weight I lost. I'm 77 now, and I feel stronger than I did a year ago. Funny how almost dying can make you appreciate being alive. I take walks every morning, longer ones now. I've joined a woodworking class at the community center. Turns out I'm pretty good at it when I'm not too poisoned to hold the tools steady. I made a jewelry box last month, gave it to Vanessa for her birthday. She cried when she opened it, and I knew we were both thinking about her mother, about all the gifts Loretta gave over the years that now felt tainted. But this box was clean, made with love that was real, not performed. Made by a father who's learning to live authentically, even if it came 53 years too late. The church has been supportive, mostly. Some people don't know what to say to the man whose wife tried to kill him. Some avoid me in the grocery store, like attempted murder might be contagious. But others have stepped up. Sister Pauline, Loretta's own sister, calls me weekly. I'm sorry, she said after the trial. I didn't know my sister was carrying all that pain. Didn't know she was living a lie. If I had known, maybe I could have helped her find another way. I told her it wasn't her fault. We can't save people from themselves. We can only love them and hope they choose to save themselves. Loretta didn't make that choice. She chose poison instead. If you've watched this whole story, if you've stayed with me through all 10 chapters, then you know this isn't a happy ending, but it's an honest one. I survived. My children are healing. I'm learning to forgive, not because Loretta deserves it, but because I deserve peace. I deserve to spend whatever years I have left without hate eating me alive from the inside. That's what poison does, you see. It doesn't just hurt the body, it hurts the soul. And I've had enough poison for one lifetime. Sometimes late at night, I wonder what would have happened if Dr. Morrison hadn't whispered those 7 words. If I just kept eating Loretta's food, kept trusting her, kept dying slowly without knowing why. Would that have been easier? To die believing I was loved? Maybe. Because now I'm alive. Really alive. Not playing a role, not pretending, not being who someone else needs me to be. Just Sterling. Just me. And that's worth something. That's worth everything. I don't know how many years I have left. Could be 5, could be 20, but they'll be mine. Lived on my terms, with people who love me for real, with truth instead of lies. And when death finally does come for me, natural death, peaceful death, I'll meet it without fear. Because I've already survived the worst thing that can happen to a person. I've survived betrayal by someone I trusted completely. I've survived poison disguised as love. I've survived 53 years of lies. And if I can survive that, I can survive anything. So to everyone watching this, everyone who stayed until the end, thank you. Thank you for listening to an old man's pain, for witnessing his survival. If you're going through something similar, if you're living with someone who wants to hurt you, if you're trapped in a lie, get out. Tell someone, call that doctor, that friend, that family member who'll believe you. Your life is worth saving. Your truth is worth telling. And peace, real peace, the kind that comes from living authentically, is worth fighting for. I found it at 77 after losing everything I thought mattered. But I found it. And you can too. Hit that subscribe button if this story moved you. Comment where you're watching from and tell me, have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? Because that's what I'm doing now, rebuilding. And you know what? The foundation is stronger this time because it's built on truth instead of lies, on love that's real instead of love that's performed, on a man who finally knows who he is, even if it took almost dying to figure it out. My name is Sterling Whitmore. I'm 77 years old. I live in Richmond, Virginia, in a house that's slowly becoming a home again. And I'm not done yet. Not even close. Because survivors don't quit. We heal, we grow, we find peace in the ruins, and we keep living. That's all any of us can do. Keep living, keep loving, keep trusting carefully, and keep moving forward, even when the road is dark and the destination is unclear. Because somewhere up ahead there's light, there's peace, there's a life worth living. And I'm going to find it, one day at a time, one step at a time, until I finally make it home.